So Chris Cavanagh, who comes to us from Super Footy, Code Sports, the Herald Sun, and his Phantom Draft, went through a mock trade that I think has got a lot of credence to it. I really like this, and that is that West Coast would be trading up to pick 9 and giving away pick 13 and 34 to the Blues. And on the surface, I can completely understand this being a little bit confusing, but once all of the machinations and let's be honest, the math kicks in, this trade would actually be a big win-win for both clubs. Let's start with the win for Carlton because they are the easiest to sort of dissect here. And you might be thinking, if you pull out, say, Draft Guru's trade pick calculator, for example, and going, they're getting less than 100 points in surplus, which would be about pick 50. Why would Carlton do this? Effectively, Carlton would want to do this deal because the picks in between theirs and the 34 selection that they would be getting from West Coast would be getting absorbed into deals. Now, granted, it would also be getting pushed out at the time because you've got guys like Ewell and Patterson who need to be added into the draft board, but more picks are going to be coming out. And granted, of course, that pick 9 at the time, because we're expecting 4 bids, that being Ewell, Patterson, Annabelle, and Harry Dean, to be done by the time that pick comes in, that 9 will then become 13. The original 13 would become 17, and that 34 would actually become 29. When you look at this in its totality, Carlton would actually be getting a surplus of just under 300 points, or equivalent to a pick in the mid to late 30s. That is significantly better than, of course, the original plus 89 odd point return, which means that they would absolutely have the points available to match a bid for Jack Eisen if that comes in at around the 20 to 25 mark, if the Harry Dean bid comes in at around pick 6, 7, or 8. Clubs can go into a deficit. Carlton obviously do not want to do that because they want, with the new draft rules coming in 26, to be able to match a bid on projected top 3 pick Cody Walker, of course, coming through their ranks next year. Carlton also have the scope on their list to take a 3rd selection in this draft, so if they do have any points left over and there is someone that they like out the back end, they would be worthy of having a look at it, considering that Dean is going to be your taller intercept defender who is going to learn underneath the likes of Jacob Wiedering. Jack Eisen is a 190-centimetre hybrid forward type. I wonder if they could look at someone at the back end of the draft from a pure ball use point of view. I look at someone like Rory Wright, for example, who would absolutely fit the bill as a really good ball user down back. For the Eagles, though, this, of course, becomes a little bit more convoluted, but stick with me here. With this draft trade in place, the Eagles would have picks 1, 2, 9, 41, and a couple of picks in the 50s. That, of course, equates to 6 draft selections. The Eagles will only be taking 5, it looks like, into this draft. One of them, of those picks in the 50s, I've said it before, I suspect is going to be Charlie Banfield, which means they only need 4 more selections with 5 picks on the table. Now, what they could do, and I'll keep this as short, sharp, and non-confusing as possible, is package up 2 and a couple of those later selections in order to get either Essendon or Melbourne, or maybe even Richmond on the phone in order to trade back from 2. Now, granted, they might do this because they might go down the draft order but get a better selection than the 41 and the 2 picks in the 50s, which are going to come in a little bit with the bids that are coming in order to fulfill their list requirements. You might be able to look at a pick from about pick 28 to 35 that you would be looking at that selection. At that point, I think Essendon's pick 27 would be the go because it would get pushed out to about 28 or 29, which means they would have 4 top 30 selections. The downside to this, of course, is that they would want no one to bid on Charlie Banfield because there is probably no way that he is going to get selected in the first 30 picks by West Coast, and there would be absolutely 0 point in them doing a trade to get a pick in the top 35 again to make their selection somewhere around the 1, 6, 13, and 28 mark, given the fact that bids are going to come in. Those are just approximations, by the way. It would make no sense for the last of those selections, that 28 pick, to be Charlie. So they might have to end up giving away maybe a 26 4th round pick to another club in order to match a bid that way. They could absolutely go ahead and do that. That's if they want to trade pick 2, though. They may not want to do that. They may just want to stick with their 1, 2, 9. From a pre-bidding standpoint, they could absolutely go ahead and do that. It would probably give them more credence to take Cooper Duff Tytler if they wanted to, because at pick 9, again, pre-bids, you're probably looking at either Dyson Sharp or Sam Grill to add to your midfield mix, both of which would be pretty worthy selections at this point. I'm more of a Dyson Sharp guy, fit wise to the Eagles, absolutely. I'm absolutely open to Grill being an Eagle in this effectively mock draft pick. If you want to call it that, that's absolutely fine. But if you're able to go through and go, we've got the best kid in the draft in Dersma, we've got the best ruck in the draft in Duff Tytler, who can absolutely spend time along with the rebuild getting as good as he can be, and having Archer Reed as support there for the Eagles in a post Matt Flynn era, if you want to go with that very loose use of era there, is okay to do. And then you add Sharp into that. That probably gives it a little bit more validity rather than waiting until 13, and then you might end up taking, say, a Jacob Farrow or a Josh Lindsay, for example, who again would be worthy selections at that point. For sure. You could even say that they might get spooked into taking Farrow because they've been so heavily linked with Hawthorn, who would have the pick before after them. In this regard, we'll wait and see how that turns out. I think Sharp would be the best go here. But if they did want to trade down, you could still be looking at both in this regard. So you could end up taking Grill or Dyson Sharp at that 5 selection if you manage to get it off the Bombers, and then you could take Grill at 9. That would absolutely be astounding in terms of a draft haul that West Coast could nab themselves. But overall, because we are going to get into more and more hypotheticals, which I kind of want to pause the video and not necessarily do that in this moment, it would probably give a bit more validity and just give us a deal that blows us away, that we cannot say no to in order for us to give up pick 2. Or we're going to go with Duff Tytler, which again would not be a bad selection in the slightest. I still think the phone would be ringing for sure, but I think pre the draft, maybe before pick 1 even goes in, that's what the 5 minutes could be spent on in order to get this kind of deal done. It would favor, of course, the Blues, it would favor the Eagles, and that's what I like about a mock trade. So what do you guys think of this proposed trade by Chris Cavanagh? Let me know. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. I would really appreciate that. I appreciate you watching. Plenty more draft content coming. I'll see you in the next one.